You already understand almost every word in a sentence, and you still can't follow what a native speaker just said to you. That gap between knowing the words and actually hearing them is the real wall, and almost nobody teaches you how to break it down. My name is Emma, and this is Natural Word English. Today, we're going to fix that wall, piece by piece, using real advanced vocabulary, the way native speakers actually use it, not the way textbooks pretend they use it. Here's why most vocabulary lessons don't work. You memorize a word on a flashcard in perfect isolation, with perfect pronunciation, and then a real person says it fast, connects it to 3 other words, drops half the sounds, and your brain freezes. That's not a vocabulary problem. That's a context problem. So in this lesson, every single word you learn today is going to arrive inside a real situation, a real conversation, a real rhythm of speech, so your brain stores it the way it will actually meet it in the real world. And along the way, I'm going to slow certain phrases down for you, then speed them back up, so your ear learns to catch what your eyes already know. Let's start with the first situation, and I want you to really picture this with me. You walk into a Monday morning meeting, and your manager looks a little tense. She says, "I want to be transparent with you." The client pushed back on the proposal, and we need to pivot quickly. 2 words there just did a lot of work. Transparent. If you're being transparent, you're being honest and open, even when the truth is a little uncomfortable. It upgrades a simple word like honest into something that carries a professional, almost moral weight. You don't just tell your team the truth, you're transparent with your team. And pivot. To pivot means to change direction quickly and deliberately, usually because something forced your hand. It upgrades the basic phrase, change plans, into a single sharp, confident verb that native speakers reach for constantly in business and in daily life. Now listen to how those words actually sound inside a fast, natural sentence, because this is where most learners lose the thread. Slowly, I want to be transparent with you. Now, at natural native speed, notice how want to often collapses into something closer to wanna, and with you blends together so smoothly, it almost sounds like one word. I wanna be transparent with you. Say it with me. Slowly first. I want to be transparent with you. Good. Now try matching the faster, connected version. I want to be transparent with you. That small shift from careful pronunciation to natural blending is exactly what your ear needs more exposure to, and we're going to keep training it all through this lesson. Let's build this into a real conversation, because a word on its own is only half a tool. Picture 2 coworkers, Daniel and Priya, standing by the coffee machine before the meeting starts. Daniel says, "Hey, have you seen the numbers from the client call yesterday?" Priya says, "Yeah, not great. I think we're going to have to pivot on the pricing strategy." Daniel says, "Pivot? How? Like a full redesign? Or just tweaking the numbers? Priya says, honestly, I want to be transparent. I don't think small tweaks are going to cut it this time. Daniel says, that's rough. Are you presenting that to the whole team? Priya says, I have to. Better they hear it from me directly than find out later and feel blindsided. Notice how natural that exchange feels. 6 lines, back and forth, building real tension and real information, not just 2 robotic sentences. That's exactly the kind of conversation you'll actually be dropped into, and that's exactly the kind of conversation we're going to keep practicing throughout this lesson. Wait. Now here's something I want you to do right now, immediately. No waiting. I'm going to read Daniel's first 2 lines again. And this time, I want you to imagine you are Priya. When I finish Daniel's line, pause the moment you hear my voice stop and answer out loud in your own words, using the situation we just built. Ready? Daniel says, hey, have you seen the numbers from the client call yesterday? Go ahead. Pause and answer as Priya in your own English right now. Okay, beautiful. However you answered, you just did something incredibly important. You didn't repeat memorized words. You generated your own English under a little bit of real pressure, which is exactly the skill that transfers into real conversations. That instinct you just used, that's the muscle we're building today. Let's move into our next vocabulary cluster. Still inside the workplace, because I want you to leave this video with words you can use tomorrow morning. Not just words you can recognize on a test. Imagine you're in that same meeting and a colleague brings up an idea that everyone quietly disagrees with, but nobody wants to be the one to shoot it down. Someone finally says, I think we need to be a bit more candid about the timeline. It's simply not feasible. Candid is close to honest, but it carries a specific flavor. Candid means speaking frankly and directly, often about something a little sensitive, without softening it too much. If honest is the basic word, candid is its more polished, more deliberate older sibling. And feasible, something that's feasible is realistically possible, achievable given the resources and time you actually have. Instead of saying, that's not going to work, a native speaker will very often say, that's not really feasible. Because it sounds measured, professional, and confident, not dismissive. Let's slow this phrase down together. Slowly. It's simply not feasible. Now listen to how simply often loses a little weight in fast, casual speech, sliding almost into simply not feasible, spoken as one smooth breath with barely a gap between the words. Try it with me slowly first. It's simply not feasible. Now faster, connected. It's simply not feasible. Nice work. You're already catching the rhythm faster than you think. Here's a short role play for you, and this time I want you fully in it. Picture yourself in a project update call. Your project lead says, can we realistically hit the launch date we promised the client? I want you to answer using either candid or feasible in your own sentence about a project, real or imagined. Pause now and speak your answer out loud. However that came out, that's real fluency practice. And every single time you do that, your brain builds a slightly faster, slightly more confident connection between the word and your own voice. That is progress, even if it didn't feel perfect. Especially if it didn't feel perfect. Now let's shift the scene completely, because advanced vocabulary doesn't only live in office meetings. It lives in how we talk about our own emotions. And this is where a lot of learners get stuck using the same 3 or 4 basic feeling words forever. Happy, sad, angry, tired. Native speakers have a much richer emotional vocabulary, and using it makes you sound not just fluent, but genuinely expressive and self-aware. Picture this moment. You just got back from a long trip. You're sitting on your couch, and a close friend texts you, asking how you're feeling. Instead of "I'm tired," imagine saying, "Honestly, I'm completely drained, but I feel oddly content." Drained goes far beyond tired. It means your energy has been fully used up, emptied out, like a battery at 0. And it captures a kind of exhaustion that tired simply can't carry on its own. And content is a quiet, settled kind of happiness. Not excitement, not joy, but a calm sense that things are okay, that you don't need anything more right now. It's a beautifully mature, emotional word. And native speakers use it constantly to describe a peaceful, grounded state of mind. Let's hear the natural rhythm. Slowly. I'm completely drained, but I feel oddly content. Notice the connected sound of "but I feel," where "but I" often blends into something closer to "would I feel" in fast, casual native speech. The T softening, almost disappearing between 2 vowel sounds. Try it slowly with me. I'm completely drained, but I feel oddly content. Now a little faster, letting those words flow together. Completiver. I'm completely drained, but I feel oddly content. Let's build a longer conversation around this, because emotional vocabulary really comes alive in dialogue. Picture 2 friends, Mia and Jordan, catching up after Mia's long work trip. Jordan says, "Hey, you're back. How was the trip?" Mia says, "Exhausting, honestly. But good exhausting, if that makes sense." Jordan says, "That's such a specific kind of tired." Mia says, "Right? I'm completely drained physically, but weirdly, I feel really content with how everything went." Jordan says, "That's a great combination, actually. Drained, but content." Mia says, "Exactly. Like my body wants to sleep for 2 days, but my mind feels really settled." Jordan says, "Okay, now I'm a little jealous. I just feel drained and stressed lately. No content in sight." Here's your chance to jump in. I want you to imagine you're Jordan right at that last moment, and instead of just feeling drained and stressed, I want you to respond with your own combination of emotional words, real ones. about how you actually feel today if you want, or an imagined moment. Pause now and speak your answer. Whatever you said, notice something. You just used real emotional vocabulary attached to a real feeling, which is exactly how these words get locked into long-term memory far more effectively than any flashcard ever could. That's a small victory. And small victories are exactly what build real fluency over time. Let's slow down for just a moment here, because we've covered a lot already, and I want your brain to settle before we keep building. Take a breath. Notice that you're not just collecting words right now. You're actually rehearsing the exact mental movement of pulling advanced vocabulary out of memory and using it in the moment, under a little bit of pressure, which is the single hardest and most valuable skill in this entire process. You're doing exactly what you need to be doing. Now, let's talk about listening itself, because understanding native speakers isn't only about vocabulary. It's about training your ear to catch sounds that connect, blend, and sometimes almost disappear. This is the piece most courses skip entirely, and it's often the real reason smart, hardworking learners still feel lost in real conversations. When native speakers talk quickly, they don't pronounce every word individually and clearly the way a textbook recording does. Words melt into each other. Sounds get dropped, and your ear has to learn new patterns, not just new vocabulary. Here's a perfect example. The question, "What are you doing today?" In careful, textbook speech sounds exactly like that, word by word. But in fast, natural speech, it often becomes something much closer to "whatcha doing today?" With "what are you" compressing down into a quick, blended "whatcha" sound. Listen to both side by side. Slow and careful. "What are you doing today?" Now fast and natural. "Whatcha doing today?" That's not lazy speech. That's just how connected English naturally flows. And once your ear learns to expect that blending, sentences that used to sound like a blur will start separating themselves into clear, understandable words. Let's practice sentence stress too, because this is another huge piece of the puzzle. Native speakers stress the words that carry the most meaning, usually the important nouns, verbs, and question words, and they speed through the small connecting words like the, to, and of. Listen to this sentence with the stress exaggerated. "What are you doing today?" Notice how are and to almost disappear, while are, doing, and today get the weight. Now, try saying that yourself, leaning into the stressed syllables. "What are you doing today?" Good. That stress pattern is the skeleton of natural English rhythm. And once you feel it in your own mouth, you'll start recognizing it instantly in other people's speech. Now let's actually practice real shadowing. The technique, because I want to explain exactly what this means so you're doing it correctly, not just guessing. Shadowing is not repeating after a pause. Shadowing means listening and speaking at almost the exact same time, like an echo. Trailing just half a second behind the original voice, so your mouth is forced to move at the real, natural speed of the language instead of your own slower, careful speed. It feels uncomfortable at first, and that discomfort is actually the sign it's working because it's forcing new muscle patterns into your mouth and tongue. Let's try it together right now with a short phrase. Sophories, I'm going to say a sentence at natural speed, and I want you to speak along with me, right on top of my voice, not after it. Ready? Here it comes. I completely understand what you mean. Try shadowing that with me, speaking almost simultaneously. I completely understand what you mean. If that felt awkward, that's completely normal. Every native level shadower felt exactly that awkwardness the first 100 times they tried it. That is genuinely progress, even when it feels clumsy. Let's move to a new vocabulary cluster now and shift the scene once more. This time, imagine you're traveling, standing in a busy airport, trying to navigate an unfamiliar situation in English. Your flight just got delayed, and the gate agent is explaining the situation over the speaker. Quickly, with an accent you're not fully used to. This is exactly the kind of high-pressure listening moment that used to shut learners down completely. And today, I want to give you the tools to stay calm and follow along even when you don't catch every single word. Here's the first key skill: listening for gist. Gist means the general, overall meaning of something without needing every single detailed word. When someone talks fast and you miss a few words, you don't need to panic and mentally freeze. You can lean into the gist using natural filler responses like, I see, that makes sense, or right, got it, to stay in the flow of the conversation while your brain catches up. Native speakers do this constantly, even with each other, because nobody actually catches every single word in fast, real conversation. Not even native speakers themselves. Let's put this into a travel situation. Imagine the gate agent says, "Folks, due to a mechanical issue, we're looking at approximately a 90-minute delay, and we'll have updated boarding information for you shortly." Marnie, if you catch delay and boarding, even if you miss mechanical issue or approximately, you've got the gist. There's a delay and more information is coming. That's genuinely enough to function calmly in the moment. Let's build vocabulary around this exact situation. Imagine you turn to the stranger sitting next to you at the gate and start a conversation. You say, "This delay is a bit frustrating, but at least they're being upfront about it." The stranger says, "Right? I'd honestly rather they be upfront than just leave us guessing." You say, "Exactly. I appreciate when airlines don't sugarcoat these things." The stranger says, "Same, although 90 minutes on top of an already long layover is rough." You say, "Tell me about it. I've got a pretty tight connection after this one." The stranger says, "Oh no, that's stressful. Have you checked if there's a later flight as backup?" Upfront means honest and direct from the very beginning, without hiding anything. It's a wonderfully useful casual upgrade to being honest. And native speakers use it constantly, especially about difficult news. And sugarcoat means to make something unpleasant sound nicer or softer than it really is, usually by hiding the harsher truth. So when someone says, "Don't sugarcoat it," they're asking for the honest, unfiltered version. Now here's your role play moment. I want you to imagine you're that stranger right at the very last line. Instead of saying what I said, I want you to respond in your own words, using upfront or sugarcoat naturally in a sentence about the situation. Pause now and answer out loud. However you answered, that's a real, spontaneous sentence built entirely by you. In a slightly stressful travel situation, which is genuinely one of the hardest and most valuable things you can practice. Nice work. That is real progress. And it's exactly the kind of moment where fluency quietly grows. Let's slow the pace down again for just a short stretch, because I want to give your mind a small, calm breathing space before we build the next block of vocabulary. If you're sitting somewhere right now, just notice your surroundings for a second. Notice how the light looks around you. Notice any sound nearby, even something small and quiet. This little pause isn't wasted time. It's actually training your brain to associate calm attention with English, which makes everything that follows land more deeply and comfortably in your memory. Now, coming out of that calm moment, I want to give you a self-practice exercise. One you can use anytime, even alone, without me, without a partner, without any resources at all. This is one of the most powerful habits fluent speakers rely on, and it uses the exact vocabulary we've built so far. The exercise is simple. Describe your immediate surroundings out loud, using your senses and a few of the advanced words we've just learned earn. We're few of the and again. For example, you might say, I feel completely drained after today, but sitting here right now, I feel oddly content. The room is quiet, and honestly, it's kind of nice that nobody's sugarcoating how tired I look. Try that yourself right now, out loud if you can. Look around you and describe what you see, what you hear, and how you feel, using at least one or two of today's words. Drained, content, candid, feasible, upfront, sugarcoat, transparent, pivot. Pause the video and give it a genuine try. That right there is exactly how these words stop being flashcard vocabulary and start becoming real, lived-in English, words that are attached to your actual voice, your actual room, your actual moment. That's the whole goal of everything we're doing in this lesson. Coming up next, we're going to move into a longer, deeper role-play conversation, a set of workplace and everyday phrases most learners never get taught properly, more phonetics and connected speech training, and a full fluency round to lock everything in before we wrap up. Type 1 to continue, and we'll keep building this together right where we left off. Let's step into a new scene, because I want to build another rich vocabulary cluster around something almost every learner deals with Technology and daily digital life, since so much of our real English exposure now happens through screens, messages, and calls. Picture this. You're on a video call with a colleague in another country, and the connection keeps cutting out. She finally says, "Sorry, the call keeps glitching. Can you hear me okay now?" You respond, "Yeah, it's clearer now, but it was pretty choppy a second ago." Glitching describes a small, unexpected technical malfunction, something briefly breaking or misbehaving, usually in a device or a connection, in a quick, almost twitchy way. It's a wonderfully specific upgrade from just saying something is broken, because it captures that stuttering, unpredictable quality. And choppy, in this context, means uneven and broken up, like the audio or video is stopping and starting instead of flowing smoothly. The same word, interestingly, that describes rough water, which is a nice little clue about how English often borrows physical images to describe abstract experiences. Let's slow this phrase down together. Slowly. The call keeps glitching. Now notice how keeps often loses a clean, sharp K sound in fast speech, blending gently into the next word, so it comes out closer to keeps glitching, spoken almost as a single breath, with barely a pause between the two words. Try it slowly. The call keeps glitching. Now faster and connected. The call keeps glitching. Let's build a longer conversation here, because I want you to hear how naturally this kind of vocabulary threads through ordinary tech frustration. Picture two coworkers, Sam and Aisha, trying to finish a call before a deadline. Sam says, "Can you hear me now?" "I think my connection was glitching for a second." Aisha says, "Yeah, it's better now, but it was really choppy for about a minute." Sam says, "Sorry about that. My internet's been unreliable all morning." Aisha says, "No worries. Should we just switch to audio only to be safe?" Sam says, "Actually, that's probably smarter. Video's clearly not cooperating today." Aisha says, "Agreed. Let's do that. And I'll email you the notes afterward just in case we drop again." Here's your moment to jump directly into this conversation. I want you to imagine you're Sam right after Aisha suggests switching to audio only. Instead of what I said, respond in your own words, using glitching or choppy naturally. Pause now and speak your answer out loud. Whatever you said, notice how naturally that flowed once the situation was already set up for you. That's exactly the benefit of learning vocabulary inside real scenes instead of in isolation. Nice work. You're building real, usable instinct here, not just memorized definitions. Let's shift again into a slightly different emotional and professional space. The vocabulary of personality, because describing people well is one of the clearest markers of advanced fluency. Picture a friend describing a new manager at work. She says, "He's incredibly meticulous, almost to a fault. But honestly, I find it kind of reassuring." Meticulous describes someone who pays extremely close, careful attention to detail. Someone who checks everything twice, who notices small mistakes others would misses. It's a much richer, more specific upgrade from simply saying someone is careful. And the phrase to a fault means that a positive quality is present in such a large amount that it becomes a slight negative. So it almost becomes a slight meticulous to a focused, that it occasionally knostes, smulus de seasoning neculus, dt down of focuses, that it occasionally slows things down or feels excessive, even though the quality itself is admirable. Let's hear that phrase at natural speed. Slowly, he's incredibly meticulous, almost to a fault. Now listen for how almost to often compresses in casual native speech, the T softening and blending, coming out closer to almost to fault, with the second T barely audible. Try it slowly first. He's incredibly meticulous, almost to a fault. Now faster. He's incredibly meticulous, almost to a fault. Let's build this into a longer dialogue, and this time, I want to use the role-switching technique properly, the way real fluent conversations actually train your instincts. Picture this: two friends, Grace and Leo, talking about their new team lead. Grace says, "How's the new manager working out?" Leo says, "Honestly, he's incredibly meticulous. Reviews every detail before anything goes out." Grace says, "That sounds intense. Is it a good kind of intense or a stressful kind?" Leo says, "Mostly good, actually. Meticulous almost to a fault, but it makes me trust his decisions." Now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read Grace's 2 lines again, and I want you to become Leo, this time answering completely in your own words, not repeating what I said, but genuinely responding, as if this were your real manager. After each of Grace's lines, pause and answer out loud before continuing. Grace says, "How's the new manager working out?" Pause now and answer as Leo in your own English. Grace says, "That sounds intense. Is it a good kind of intense or a stressful kind?" Pause again and answer as Leo, continuing the conversation naturally. However that came out, you just carried an entire 2-turn conversation completely on your own, generating real responses under a little bit of pressure, which is precisely the skill that separates passive learners from genuinely fluent speakers. That's real, tangible progress, and you should feel good about that. Let's add one more layer to this personality cluster, because I want to give you a word that native speakers reach for constantly, almost every single day in casual conversation. Imagine a friend telling you about someone they just met at a party. She says, "He seemed really down to earth, actually. Not pretentious at all, considering how successful he is." Down to earth describes someone who is humble, practical, and easy to relate to, without any arrogance or artificial behavior. No matter how impressive their actual life or achievements might be. It's one of the warmest compliments in everyday English. And pretentious describes someone who tries to appear more important, intelligent, or sophisticated than they actually are. in a way that feels fake or try hard rather than genuine. Let's slow this phrase down. Slowly. He seemed really down to earth. Notice how really and down often blend slightly in fast, casual speech, the sounds sliding together smoothly rather than staying sharply separated. Try it slowly. He seemed really down to earth, now faster and more connected. He seemed really down to earth. Let's put this into one more short dialogue, layering it directly on top of the personality vocabulary we just built. Maya says, "So what was he like?" "I heard he's pretty successful." Ben says, "Surprisingly down to earth." "I expected him to be a bit pretentious, honestly." Maya says, "That's refreshing. A lot of people in his position aren't like that at all." Ben says, "Exactly what I thought. He asked more questions about me than he talked about himself." I want you to imagine your Maya right after Ben's last line. Respond in your own words, continuing this conversation naturally, using down to earth or pretentious if it fits. Pause now and speak your answer. Nice work. Every one of these small, real responses is quietly strengthening the exact mental pathway you'll use the next time you're in an actual English conversation, under actual real-world pressure, with no video pausing to help you. Let's shift the scene one more time. Let's shift the scene one more time into something a little more emotionally layered, because I want to give you vocabulary for describing conflict and difficult conversations. Something almost every learner eventually needs, and almost nobody teaches properly. Picture this. You're describing a disagreement you had with a close friend. You say, "We had a bit of a tense conversation, but honestly, I think it cleared the air." Tense, in this context, describes an atmosphere or a conversation filled with stress, discomfort, or unspoken conflict. You can feel the tension almost physically, even if nobody's shouting. And the phrase "clear the air" means to resolve misunderstanding or tension by openly discussing a problem so that things feel calmer and more honest afterward. It's a beautifully visual phrase. Imagine a room full of heavy, thick air that suddenly becomes light and breathable again. Let's hear the natural rhythm. Slowly. I think it cleared the air. Notice how cleared the often blends together in fast native speech with the da softening into the next word rather than standing out sharply. Try it slowly. I think it cleared the air. Now faster. I think it cleared the air. Let's build one more conversation here, a slightly longer one, because this particular emotional territory deserves a fuller scene. Picture two roommates, Anna and Chris. The morning after a small argument, Anna says, "Hey, about last night. I've been thinking about it." Chris says, "Yeah, me too. It got a little more tense than I wanted it to." Anna says, "Same. I don't think either of us meant to escalate it like that." Chris says, "Definitely not. I just felt like you weren't really hearing me." Anna says, "That's fair, actually. I think I was more defensive than I needed to be." Chris says, "Honestly, I appreciate you saying that." I feel like this cleared the air a lot. That's a full, emotionally real conversation. 6 lines deep, moving from tension into resolution. Exactly the shape real difficult conversations actually take. Now, here's your chance to extend it. Imagine Anna responds one more time after Chris's final line, continuing the conversation naturally, in your own words. Pause now and speak your answer as Anna. However that came out, you just practiced something genuinely difficult, expressing yourself in English during an emotionally sensitive moment, which is one of the most valuable and most avoided skills in language learning. That is real, meaningful progress, even if your sentence wasn't perfect, especially if it wasn't perfect. Let's pause here again, gently, for just a moment, because we've covered a lot of emotional and interpersonal ground. Take a small breath. Notice that every single role play you've done so far, every pause where you spoke out loud, is quietly rewiring how quickly your brain can reach for these words under real pressure. This is exactly the slow, steady kind of practice that actually builds lasting fluency, far more than passive listening ever could on its own. Now let's go back to phonetics for a moment, because I promised you real ear training throughout this lesson, not just at the beginning. Let's look at question intonation, because this is something that quietly trips up even advanced learners. In English, most information questions, the ones starting with what, where, why, how, actually fall in pitch at the end, dropping down, rather than rising up the way many other languages ask questions. But yes or no questions usually rise at the end. Listen to the difference. Falling for an information question. Where did you put it? Notice the pitch drops on it. Now rising for a yes or no question. Did you put it away? Notice the pitch lifts right at the very end. Try both with me. First, falling. Where did you put it? Now rising. Did you put it away? Eat? That small shift in pitch carries real meaning in English, and once your ear starts automatically noticing it, you'll find yourself understanding the emotional tone of questions far more naturally, without even consciously thinking about it. Ease Masset. Let's also look at one more connected speech pattern, because I want to give you real tools, not just theory. The phrase, I don't know, is famously compressed in fast native speech, often coming out closer to I done know, with the T and the beginning of no blending almost completely together. Listen slowly first. I don't know. Now at natural fast speed. I dunno. Try both yourself. I don't know. I dunno. That compressed version isn't sloppy or incorrect. It's simply how real, relaxed native speech naturally flows, and recognizing it instantly will remove one of the most common blocks learners hit in real conversations. Discnate. Let's bring in one more full vocabulary cluster before we take our next short pause, this time centered on describing challenges and problem solving, because this vocabulary shows up constantly in both work and daily life. Picture yourself describing a difficult project to a friend. You say, "It was a logistical nightmare, honestly, but we managed to salvage it in the end." Logistical describes anything related to the detailed planning and organizing of a complex process. Coordinating people, timing, resources, movement, and nightmare used this way doesn't mean an actual bad dream. It's a common, vivid way of describing something extremely stressful, chaotic, or difficult to manage, almost unbearably so. Together, logistical nightmare is a phrase. Native speakers reach for constantly to describe complicated, frustrating planning situations. And salvage means to save or rescue something from a situation that seemed like a failure. Pulling something valuable or workable out of what looked like a total loss. Let's hear this at natural speed. Slowly, we managed to salvage it in the end. Notice how managed to often compresses into something closer to managed a, the T of to softening and nearly disappearing in fast casual speech. Try it slowly. We managed to salvage it in the end. Now faster. We managed to salvage it in the end. Let's build one final dialogue for this block, layering everything together. Picture 2. Event planners, Noah and Ellie. After a chaotic weekend, Noah says, "How was the wedding in the end?" "I heard the venue changed last minute." Ellie says, "It was a logistical nightmare, honestly. Venue change, 2 vendors canceling, the works." Noah says, "That sounds brutal. How did it actually turn out?" Ellie says, "Somehow we managed to salvage it. Guests had no idea anything went wrong." Noah says, "That's genuinely impressive. That takes serious skill under pressure." Ellie says, "Thanks. I think I aged 5 years that weekend, though." Here's your final role play for this block. Imagine you're Noah right after Ellie's last line. Respond naturally, in your own words, continuing the conversation. Pause now and speak your answer. "Nice work." That's another full, real conversation you've now actively participated in, using genuinely advanced vocabulary attached to a real emotional situation, which is exactly the kind of repetition that turns knowledge into instinct over time. Coming up, we're going to move into our final stretch, a deeper dive into gist listening under fast, realistic speech. One more grounding self-practice exercise using everything we've learned so far. A full fluency round, pulling every single word from this lesson together into rapid-fire practice. And a clear, specific way to keep this progress going after the video ends. Type 1 to continue, and we'll pick up exactly where we left off. Let's keep building, moving now into a slightly faster-paced listening challenge, because I want your ear to get real practice with speech that isn't slowed down for you at all. Imagine you're listening to 2 native speakers chatting quickly, casually, the way people actually talk when they're not thinking about a learner in the room. Listen to this exchange at natural conversational speed, without me breaking it apart first. Honestly, I was kinda blindsided by the whole thing. But I guess in hindsight, it makes sense why she reacted that way. If you caught most of that, wonderful. That's real, fast, connected English. And understanding even 70% of it on a first listen is a genuine sign of progress. If you only caught fragments, that's completely fine too, because that's exactly what we're training right now. Let's pull it apart gently. Blindsided means to be caught completely by surprise, by something unpleasant or shocking, usually because you had no warning at all, like being hit from a direction you weren't watching. And in hindsight is a phrase meaning looking back at a situation now with the understanding you didn't have at the time. It's the wisdom that only appears after the fact. Once everything has already happened. Here's the important listening skill. I want you to practice with this exact sentence. Neviwizan, you don't need to catch every single word to understand the meaning. If you caught blindsided and hindsight, you actually caught the two most meaningful words in that entire sentence, and everything else, kinda, the whole thing, I guess, it makes sense, is mostly connective tissue holding the meaning together, not the meaning itself. This is exactly how native speakers listen to each other too. Nobody catches every single word, ever. Not even native speakers listening to other native speakers. Everyone is constantly filling in gaps using context, and now, so are you. Let's slow this sentence down together, then bring it back up to speed, so you can feel the difference directly in your own ear. Slowly, I was kind of blindsided by the whole thing. Now, at natural fast speed, notice how kind of almost always collapses into kinda, and by the often blends together smoothly. I was kind of blindsided by the whole thing. Try both yourself. Slow first. I was kind of blindsided by the whole thing. Now fast. I was kind of blindsided by the whole thing. Let's build a full conversation using both of today's newest words, because I want you to hear them living naturally inside real dialogue, the way you'll actually encounter them. Picture two friends, Ruth and Marcus, talking after a family gathering. Ruth says, "How did the conversation with your brother go?" Marcus says, "Honestly, I was kinda blindsided. I wasn't expecting him to bring that up at all." Ruth says, "Oh no, what did you say?" Marcus says, "Not much in the moment. But in hindsight, I probably should have just been honest right away." Ruth says, "That's fair. Hindsight's always clearer than the actual moment, though." Marcus says, "Exactly. In the moment, I just kind of froze." Let's use the role switching technique again here, properly. I'm going to read Ruth's 2 lines one more time, and I want you to step fully into Marcus's role, answering completely in your own words, based on your own imagined situation, if you'd like. Pause after each line and respond out loud before continuing. Ruth says, "How did the conversation with your brother go?" Pause now and answer as Marcus in your own words. Ruth says, "Oh no, what did you say?" Pause again and continue the conversation as Marcus. However that went, notice what just happened. You carried an entire emotionally real conversation using genuinely advanced vocabulary, completely on your own, without any script to lean on. That is exactly what fluency actually looks like in practice. Built one small, brave attempt at a time. Now, let's move into one more grounding, sensory self-practice exercise, because I want to give you a tool you can use completely alone, anywhere, without needing a video, a partner, or even an internet connection. This time, I want you to describe not just your surroundings, but a recent situation from your own life using at least 3 or 4 of the words we've built today. Meticulous, down to earth, tense, cleared the air, logistical nightmare, salvage, blindsided, in hindsight, drained, content, candid, feasible, transparent, pivot, upfront, sugarcoat, glitching, choppy. Try it right now, out loud. Think of something that actually happened to you recently. A work situation, a conversation with a friend, a small daily frustration. And describe it using this vocabulary, connecting real meaning to real memory. Pause the video and genuinely try this before continuing. That right there is the single most powerful thing you can do with today's lesson, because you just attached brand new advanced vocabulary directly onto a real lived memory of your own, which creates a far stronger, far more durable connection in your brain than any list of definitions ever could. Now, let's move into our fluency round, because I want to pull every single word from this entire lesson together, rapid fire, so your brain gets one final, fast pass through everything we've built. I'm going to move through these quickly, and I want you to say each word or phrase out loud with me the instant you hear it. Without pausing to think, trusting whatever comes to your mind first. Twance, pivot, candid, feasible, drained, content. Upfront, sugarcoat, glitching, choppy, meticulous, to a fault, down to earth, pretentious, tense, clear the air, logistical nightmare, salvage, blindsided, in hindsight. Nice work. That's 19 pieces of genuinely advanced, genuinely real, genuinely usable vocabulary, all pulled from actual situations you can picture immediately, and all of them now connected to your own voice, your own pauses, your own imagined and real conversations from the last several minutes. Before we close, I want to leave you with one final piece of listening advice, because I think it matters more than almost anything else in this entire lesson. Understanding native speakers clearly isn't about eliminating every gap in your comprehension. Even native speakers have gaps constantly in every conversation they have. It's about becoming comfortable inside those gaps, trusting the gist, trusting the rhythm, trusting the sentence stress, kenphrases, and staying present in the conversation instead of mentally shutting down the moment you miss a word. That comfort, that calm confidence inside uncertainty is really what fluency actually feels like from the inside. Here's your specific action for today. Something measurable, something real. In the comments, I want you to write one full sentence using any single word from today's lesson connected to something true about your actual life right now. Not a random example sentence, something real, something yours. That single act of writing it down, connecting an advanced word to your own real life, does more for your long-term memory than simply watching passively ever could. If this lesson helped your ear catch even one pattern it didn't catch before, that's genuinely worth celebrating. And I'd love to keep building this with you. Subscribe if you want more lessons exactly like this one. Slow where you need slow, fast where you need fast, always inside real situations, never just floating lists of words. I'll see you in the next lesson.